Judith Parker's life looked like a dream. At 32, she had everything most women would envy: a charming husband, Mark, a beautiful home, and a career as a senior marketing executive at a thriving firm. Every morning, she woke up to the smell of freshly brewed coffee and the sight of Mark smiling from across their kitchen table. He adored her. That much was clear. Their marriage was built on loyalty, laughter, and years of shared memories. But lately, Judith felt a quiet emptiness she couldn't explain. Her laughter felt practiced, her smile sometimes delayed. She told herself it was just stress, that the spark that once lit their love had simply dimmed with time. Yet, deep down, she felt something missing, something she couldn't name. That morning, as she packed her suitcase for a business trip, Mark kissed her forehead and said, "Don't work too hard, Mrs. Parker." She smiled, but her heart didn't flutter like it used to. She didn't know that this trip would change everything and test every vow she'd ever made. The conference hall buzzed with chatter and camera flashes. Judith had just finished her presentation when she heard a familiar voice behind her, warm, deep, and dangerously nostalgic. "Judith?" She turned and her heart stopped. It was Stephen, her college sweetheart, the man she once thought she'd marry. He looked even better than she remembered, taller, more confident, his smile now carrying the quiet charm of maturity. "It's really you," he said softly, eyes locked on hers. Judith's breath caught. They talked over coffee, pretending it was casual, but beneath every word lingered unspoken memories. The laughter, the heartbreak, the what if. Judith told herself it was just catching up. Yet, when their hands accidentally brushed, something electric shot through her chest. That night in her hotel room, she stared at the ceiling, replaying his smile. She whispered to herself, "You're married, Judith. Stop this." But her heart, traitorous, wild, had already started to remember how they used to be. Stephen texted the next morning, just a simple, "Coffee before your flight?" Judith hesitated for a full minute before typing back, "Sure." They met in a quiet cafe near the airport. Conversation flowed easily, laughter bubbling between them as if the years had never passed. He talked about his career in architecture, about how life had taken him across cities, but never into a real relationship. "I guess I never found someone who made me feel like you did," he admitted. Judith froze, her pulse racing. She forced herself to smile, changing the subject, but the damage was done. That line followed her all the way home, into her shower, her bed, her dreams. When Mark wrapped his arms around her that night, Judith felt guilt gnawing at her chest. She wasn't cheating, not really, but emotionally, her heart was already drifting toward dangerous waters. Mark noticed the change before Judith did. She laughed less, smiled absently, stared at her phone too long. "Everything okay?" he asked one evening as they prepared dinner together. She nodded quickly, too quickly. Her phone buzzed again, a message from Stephen. She ignored it, pretending not to see. But Mark saw her hesitation. His chest tightened, though he said nothing. That night, Judith lay awake listening to the rhythm of Mark's breathing beside her. She told herself she loved him. She did. He was kind, dependable, and safe. But that word, safe, felt suddenly suffocating. Stephen's words replayed in her head. "I guess I never found someone who made me feel like you did." And as guilt tangled with longing, a dangerous thought crept in. Maybe life wasn't meant to be perfect. Maybe it was meant to be real. Days turned into weeks, and Judith tried to silence her heart with work. But Stephen wouldn't stay silent. His texts were gentle at first. "Hope you're well." Then more personal. "Thought of you today." When he flew into her city for a project, he suggested dinner. Judith said no. Then yes. The restaurant was dimly lit, intimate. As they talked, laughter returned. Real laughter. He reached across the table and brushed her hand. For a second, the world blurred. But before anything could happen, Judith stood abruptly. "I can't," she whispered, eyes glassy. Stephen nodded, pain flickering in his gaze. "I know," he said softly. "But tell me you don't still feel it." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The truth hung between them, undeniable, dangerous, and alive. That night, Judith cried in her car, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. She wasn't unfaithful, but she wasn't innocent either. Mark could feel it. The space between him and Judith had grown wide, invisible but heavy. She still smiled, still kissed him goodbye, but the warmth in her eyes was gone. When he tried to hold her, she stiffened slightly before melting into his arms. One evening he reached across the couch and gently took her hand. "Judith," he said, voice soft. "Did I do something wrong?" Her heart clenched. "Of course not," she replied too quickly. "I'm just tired. Work's been crazy." But Mark wasn't fooled. He had known her for 6 years. He could read every flicker of hesitation. That night, when she showered, he stood in the living room staring at her phone on the table. He didn't touch it, but the urge to know burned inside him. Upstairs, Judith leaned against the tiled wall, the water mixing with silent tears. She was exhausted from pretending. Every time she tried to forget Stephen, her heart betrayed her. She wanted her marriage to work. But such feelings doesn't vanish just because you wish it to. When she climbed into bed beside Mark, she whispered, "I'm sorry." He didn't ask for what. He just held her, silently fearing he was already losing her. It happened late one night. Mark woke to Judith's phone buzzing on the nightstand. Normally, he'd ignore it. But something inside him, the ache, the doubt, made him look. A message flashed across the screen. "I still think about you." His stomach twisted. He didn't know who it was yet, and he didn't need to. When Judith returned from the bathroom, Mark was sitting up, her phone in his hand. "Who's Stephen?" he asked quietly, her breath caught. The world tilted. "Mark, it's not what you think," she began, voice trembling. "Oh, really?" His tone was sharp now, eyes glistening with betrayal. "Then tell me what it is." Tears filled her eyes. "We met at a conference. He's someone I used to love." I shouldn't have replied. "But I never cheated on you." Mark's jaw tightened. "You didn't have to," he said softly. "You already gave him the part of you that's mine." The silence that followed was deafening. Judith reached for him, but he pulled away. "I need some time," he said, leaving the room. That night, Judith realized the one thing worse than losing Stephen was losing Mark. Days turned into a fog of silence. Mark spoke to her only when necessary. Meals were quiet. Even the house felt colder. Judith tried to fix it, cooking his favorite meals, writing long apology notes. But nothing worked. She finally decided to tell Stephen it was over. They met at a quiet park. He smiled when he saw her, but his face fell at her tone. "Stephen, we can't do this anymore. I've hurt the man who's done nothing but love me." Stephen's jaw clenched. "Judith, I never asked you to leave him, but don't lie to yourself. You're not happy." Her voice broke. "Really? And will doing this with you and hurting him bring me happiness?" He looked at her for a long time, eyes glistening. "Then go," he said softly. "But just know, you'll think of me when the house is quiet, when your heart feels empty again." Judith turned and walked away, quietly. As she drove home, she couldn't tell if she'd done the right thing, or just buried her truth alive. Mark didn't come home that night, or the next. Judith tried to call, but he wouldn't answer. When he finally returned 3 days later, he looked worn out, eyes tired, voice distant. "We need to talk," he said. "I know," she whispered. He sat across from her at the kitchen table, the same place where they once shared laughter and lazy breakfasts. "I went to my brother's," he said quietly. "I needed to think. I love you, Judith, but I can't live like this. Wondering if your heart's still with me." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Mark, I want to fix this. Please, I'm not in love with Stephen anymore." "Are you sure?" he asked, searching her face. "Because love doesn't just vanish." Judith hesitated. That pause, that tiny flicker of uncertainty told him everything. Mark stood, his expression shattered. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "But maybe we both deserve something real, even if it's not each other." He walked away, suitcase in hand, leaving Judith surrounded by the ghosts of the life they built together. The silence that followed felt heavier than heartbreak itself. Months passed. Judith lived in the same house, but it felt foreign now, filled with echoes of laughter that no longer existed. Mark had moved out, though they spoke occasionally, polite, cautious conversations. Stephen had reached out once, but Judith never replied. She spent her days working, healing, and facing the reflection she'd long avoided. One rainy afternoon, Mark came by to collect the last of his things. They stood awkwardly in the living room, memories flickering between them. "You look better," he said softly. "I'm trying," she smiled faintly. "You?" "I'm getting there." He paused, then looked at her. "Judith, for what it's worth, I forgive you." Tears filled her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "And I'm sorry for everything." He nodded, a small sad smile forming. "We were good once." "Yes," she said. "We were." He smiled sadly, turned and walked away. When he left, Judith stood by the window watching the rain blur the world outside. She finally understood, love isn't always about holding on. Sometimes it's about letting go with grace. Her phone buzzed. A new message from Stephen. "Still thinking of you." She stared for a long moment, then deleted it. This time, her heart didn't ache. It simply exhaled, free at last.